Welcome to the Friday Council, a podcast exploring modern life and the human condition. Join us each week for a new conversation. This is the Friday Council. Welcome back to another episode of the Friday Council podcast. Today is episode 34, and we have a special guest, as you can see. His name is Lucas Devotion.
Hello.
Welcome.
Very special guest.
Thank you for having me.
My name's Nav, and joined by Daniel and David, as well as Lucas, obviously.
Yo.
Yeah.
This is kind of meta because I originally talked about the idea when you guys put out this podcast, right?
Right.
It was very exciting because we knew that you guys, and so you put out this podcast, and we'd been thinking about doing kind of like a joke podcast for a while, like a parody podcast. I had a couple of ideas I was throwing around. I was thinking about doing like a parody of true crime shows, but just talking about car crashes that happened, dramatically, because you're more likely to die in a car crash than serial killer. So it's more scary. I code this car crash.
You're doing a public service, making people realize the true danger.
Exactly. And one of the ideas that was thrown out was doing the Saturday Senate, which is sitting down and listening to your podcast and giving reviews on how edgy your takes were each week. Never came into fruition, and now I'm on the podcast. I can't do it. Because
you don't want to be that meta. You don't want to reference your own
that would be
edginess.
weird. Yeah,
that'd be a bit masturbatory. Yeah. Today, you're the entrepreneur genius that we know personally. I hope you don't take that too much. First off, I wanted to ask you. I've always wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about embracing cringe, as I call it?
Yeah.
I think part of growing up has been a realization that sometimes the most cringe stuff that you're into specifically is the most rewarding for you, and really embracing cringe. Speaking of meta, starting this podcast, I always say, felt cringe, doing it and putting it out there, but then just embracing cringe in that way, not really caring what other people think of you, we're told you should be. But everyone cares.
No, I know what you mean. It's hard. I mean, the cringe thing is interesting. I've definitely stamped my life with that. If I ever tried to get like a real job again, I have a lot to explain. There's 4-hour videos of me singing the Jonas Brothers out of tune on the internet.
Yeah, that stuff.
Film myself in the bathtub rapping about my ex-girlfriend. Like, I can't escape this.
Well, you've also
committed.
got, you're doing a Pokemon.
I'm doing my Pokemon
marathon.
live stream. Yeah.
In this day and age, the right company would see that as an asset, though, like a marketing agency or something. They'd be like, this dude has got the sauce.
I hope so.
He's not a cookie cutter. He's unique, not afraid. I think it could help you, but I know what you mean. You're probably not going to get a job in HR or something.
I would have some things to explain.
Yeah, it's. I feel like it's admirable, even if we think we look like damn, this guy's doing it, and it does inspire.
Yes.
Yeah, is that how you guys feel about the podcast? If you're pitching yourself to an employer or a company for sponsorship or whatever in the future, you would see the podcast as more of like a positive as opposed to anything that could.
I think so.
I would
like
think
a university degree is just a piece of paper that says you can study. I think like doing a podcast is evidence that you can be cringe and push through.
It's proof rather than just shows that you can pass tests. It's practical, I think.
Yeah. I think podcasts too, because they give you a chance to be authentic and be yourself. And for us anyway, in this environment, we kind of set out originally as just like friends who just want to chat about things.
Yeah.
It's like a diary.
Yeah, kind of like a diary, and just, things that are going on, things that we've learned from our past growing up.
Yeah.
I think that was our sort of target market originally. It was probably coming out of high school, trying to find yourself, what you're doing, because even we could argue now, I'm 27, 28. Sometimes we still don't know what we're trying to do.
All the time.
Yeah. So it's like, well, if we're still in that phase of not knowing what to do, we may as well just at least put ourselves out there as
because I think there's a lot of people
click record.
who resonate with that.
Yeah.
Because I think there's sort of this weird perception in life where you think that you should have it figured out by your late 20s or whatever, but I don't think that many people, I don't know that anyone ever truly does. Some people are just somewhat ignorant. They close themselves off and think that they have it all figured out. So I think there's a lot of people who probably feel, and myself included, sort of like, oh, I'm not where I should be. Like everyone else has, got it all figured out. And that's not actually true. Everyone's kind of thinking the same thing. It's just that not many people are actually willing to talk about it, that we've got no clue what we're doing. And someone who summed it up quite well was Paige. I don't know if you know Paige Elder. She said, I think, like, I forget exactly how she said it, but something like, she's coming to the realization that we're basically 13 for the rest of our lives. It's like that. It's like 100%.
You keep waiting to feel older,
but and
you never do.
Farts will always be fun. You said something that gave me an idea. Have you received much criticism or like genuine like ridicule for anything that you've done, or what do you think about
definitely.
ridicule?
I think I
or like scoffing, like puh, like, puh, what's he doing?
I do feel in a very unique position. I really don't have a lot in my life figured out, but this is one of the things I feel pretty confident in, because I had to sort it out, because otherwise I would have just stagnated. Obviously putting out stuff, like being on the stage is kind of just like what I want to do, like self-expression. And if you don't kind of kill the cancer that is insecurity, it's like a real big issue.
One. Still working.
Do you think everyone should be doing all different things, but generally the same thing with their attitude? If you get what I'm saying, everyone should be crushing that and putting themselves publicly on with the internet.
Not necessarily. No, it doesn't make for everyone. But I think it rears its head in private life as well. I think,
what do you mean by that?
Like public people who are trying to put themselves out there publicly are more exposed to it because it's at scale. There's more people. In private life, you still like a comment from a coworker or a friend, or there's every stereotype under the book, like people marrying into this certain circumstance because that's what their family wants, or it's in public life it's more obvious because it's at scale, because it's massive, because everyone can see it, because everyone's pointing fingers. But these feelings are still affecting us in our private lives as well. It's just no one's really able to, there's no spectacle to it. You know what I mean?
I think I understand what you mean. It might even be something, well, this is not private as such, but like at school, it's still much smaller than, social media or a concert or whatever, is like being afraid to like put your hand up and ask a question or give the answer. Like that's a form of that.
Micro tests that start you off.
So that's again, it's somewhat public, but still relatively small scale. Being too insecure to have a different answer or whatever.
I was thinking this might not be along the same lines, but for example, taking my dog for a walk. In theory, I should be able to just say hello to every single person I come across the pathway with. But you kind of just shelter to yourself. You're like, I'm living my life. They're doing whatever. Like, but we're still all humans, Like we still want connection. So I think even just a simple hello is like easy. That's a good place to start.
Maybe you're not supposed to do a podcast. Maybe you're comfortable just saying hello to more people than you would otherwise. So, you mentioned something about parents, because my parents did this, blah, blah, blah. What do you think about repeating? We've talked a lot about our parents, invented about our parents, like just repeating ideas and attitudes to life from your that your parents taught you. And just, I'm doing this because they did it. I already do my own thing. What were your parents like?
I feel like we have people in our lives that we model. There's a lot of, because we spend so much time around our parents as children, obviously they're like one of the main influences. And then, there's kind of this demon that is society that also influences us as well. But I think some of it comes from friends and stuff as well. My parents definitely had an interesting dynamic. I'm still kind of working that out in my head. I don't know if there's a ton to say about it, but I do know probably the most valuable thing like that I use right now that my dad taught me. He's in his 60s now. He's still as spry as someone my age. It's insane, and he gets so much done. And his kind of methodology is just like getting one thing done a day.
Nice.
And it's so like simple and plain, and we live in this world of productivity hacks and self-help and 7 habits of time blocking, and you know what I mean? And
do the work.
Yeah, simple. And he just is like, I'm just getting one thing done a day, and you're like, okay, I got 6 things on my plate open, but then he gets it done, and then the next day gets it done, and then the next day, and then in a year the project's done. And despite these 6 plates that I'm juggling, I've achieved list because it's,
that's a very good point. Like, just apply that to my own personal life. I have certain like goals I would say are bigger on a grander scale, but then you focus so much on the big picture that you can't even get the little things done, like taking the rubbish out and just the things that you know you need to like and feel good about yourself, or at least progress. But then you're like, oh no, I need to be able to do this, I need to get this done, but doesn't actually help.
There's a great quote that sums that train of thought up perfectly. It's the man who chases 2 rabbits catches none.
It's a good one.
That's a good quote.
That's good. You're stoked with that one. That was good. That was good.
That smile.
I've had that one in my pocket for a while.
No, that makes sense.
Let's loop back to the cringe thing just real quick, because
go for it.
obviously
that was my main question I wanted to ask.
I've listened to your podcast, and I want to kind of give something actionable because I respect you guys and your platform and having me on. Please. Because I think it's easier to say, just stomp out insecurity, get rid of it. But it is more. It's that simple, but it's more complex than that. I think everyone knows how to do it, but
that they should at least,
or that they should. Well, I think because they know they should, they know how to do it. Like if you posted something online and you got some comments that affected you emotionally, like what would just right now? We'll just play this game. What would your mind look like? How would you battle?
It'd be
red hot.
Oh, how to battle it? It'd be looping. It'd be like looping with like thinking of the best, most own back, like to pwn and back. That would never fruit to anything.
For me, it would be. I think it'd be. I think I don't know how to describe it. We've probably all felt it, like that stabbing feeling.
Like hot flush.
Hot flush though, like you've been stabbed in the back, or in the heart, like very painful, very internal, sort of heartbreak almost. I think that would be my reaction.
Yeah. What about you, Nath?
Yeah, most probably along the same lines. Like the intellect of me would want to say, who are they to say? But then there's that human element where it's like, oh, this person's talking directly about me. Yeah. So, I'd probably be similar as David, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the common, like that's how all of us react. And of course, I'm not saying anything's like perfect and you're never going to feel that like stabbing sensation. But I did trick you guys a little bit with that one.
Okay.
Because I said something that emotionally affects you. I didn't say negative.
Ah, yes.
And that's
we just assume.
That's the answer to the question. People get so butthurt and upset about all the negative shit they see online because when they're listening to the positive stuff, when they're listening to their friends hyping them up, oh, this is the fucking best thing, blah, 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 they're taking that on board as well.
Okay.
Once you open the door to take on the positive stuff, you're relying on those people having a good opinion of you. So when they don't, it fucks you. And it fucks you real bad.
Yeah. I think on that, if you're how do I put this? If you're gonna let yourself be affected by the negative, then and you're also letting yourself be affected by the positive, and I think the answer to that is kind of like a Zen answer is to negate the positive as well. So that will if you just don't care if it's positive, like you can't take all the positive and let that hit you deep and then push out the negative. You've either got to be, let both ends of the spectrum affect you or kind of be like this, like,
block
or try
out,
and be
like,
none.
Out of sight, out of mind thing.
You can say like, oh, I'm proud of myself for some plants that I've been growing. And that's all I feel real good because it's all from me, and other people are like, oh, this is sick, man. Like, this is so sick. Like, you're going to help me out. Like, and blah, blah, blah. But it will do inevitably, but I try not to, like, consciously not to let that influence me. Yeah. Just as much as if someone harshly criticized me for the same plant.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's totally it. Yeah. And so that was my approach to it, especially last year when we were putting out a lot of music, when we were experimenting, the public eye. I did the Jonas Brothers stream where I was singing off key for 3 hours. Like, I put a lot of myself out there, and it only became easy when I stopped caring that people were hyping me up.
Yeah,
that's all it was.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It only takes going on to Reddit and seeing an article about a specific person in the press to see just how like people perceive them in the comments.
Yeah.
And like if I put myself say I was in a position of power, like a politician, or like, if this blew up as we want it to,
will do.
People will do.
I
yes.
like that.
People will eventually have opinions of us and what we think and what we believe, and I think it just takes bit by bit of just letting go, like not caring about what other people think. But that takes time. And like I haven't got it right. I still occasionally walk along the street and think, oh, there's people driving past and thinking about me, like, but realistically, no one cares. I'm just walking along the street.
Everyone's thinking about themselves.
It doesn't matter. So if it ever will get to that point where we're in the public and people have things to say, I would hope by that point that I'd have it learn and be able to shut it out completely. Like Joe Rogan says that he has guests on his podcast. They go, oh, this person said this about me, and he's got it figured out. He says, just don't look at it. Like you've got to block it out. Yeah. But
easier said than done.
Yeah, it's easier said than done.
But it's possible. It's possible.
It's definitely like a skill set as well, a balancing act. Because especially when you bring like aspects of like wanting to have an audience, wanting to grow a business, like for you guys wanting to expand the audience of the podcast, even in like the Joe Rogan example, like you're trying not to listen to like the positive, the negative. You're just trying to do your thing, but you still kind of need to know what's happening for the data set. Like, was this something that is going to make me lose my audience? Was this something that my audience
that's a
support?
good point.
And so you're kind of needing to actually consume some of that, that fire to find out what's going on, but also trying to keep yourself at a safe distance so you don't kind of let it creep in. And so I think it's a balancing act. Like I think the moment you think it sorted, like something will come up and slap you in the face. Like you're never going to be able to fully escape the emotion of it. But every time I hear someone talking about how, or like reacting badly to how like the negative comments are, I'm always like, because you're not actually doing it for you right now. You're doing it for the people who are hyping you up.
Yeah, that relates to my question when I asked you whether this is for everyone. I think because like you doing for example, the Jonas Brothers thing, that was, I imagine, that's like you said, it's you putting yourself out there. And I think I've forgotten where I was going with that. Damn it. Carry on.
Come back
to me.
No, that's fine. Because let's say you talk about some of the projects you've done in the past. So this Jonas Brothers one, for those who are listening, can you explain what that is? And
it was kind of a two-sided project. I guess public facing, and the initial point of it was to just do the silly stream where I sung the entire Jonas Brothers discography, and raised money, and then donated the money to a diabetes charity because Nick Jonas has diabetes.
Right.
And so I thought it'd be funny. I thought it'd be cool, and it was also an exercise in myself because I can't sing very clearly and very obviously from the stream, and so to put, but it being 3.5 hours, I think 3.5 hours of me singing horribly to what most people perceive as music for children and teenage girls, required the kind of me to fight that feeling, of like, well, every girl I've ever liked is gonna know that I can't sing now. You know what I mean? Just that kind of overarching negative feeling, and that was one of the foundational blocks, I would say, to working on the music last year and putting myself out there instead of like, oh, I'm singing off key, I'm doing this whole thing as like a joke to raise money, to like, okay, now I'm actually taking this seriously.
Nice.
Because that's when projects like step up. Like I think it's really easy. I think we all at some points kind of get in the trap of doing a project at like 60, 80%, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, because then if someone shits on it, we can go, yeah, well, it makes sense.
Yeah, I've got the fallback, you know.
Yeah, I didn't put my all into it.
Yeah, and that's a good example. Early in the podcast, you know, when we started off, there were struggles I would have, you know, like, oh, I'm editing this. What is the point? Like, this is taking up an hour, 2 hours of my week. But I had to like change my frame of mind. It's like, no, I'm actually learning something here. I'm learning how to edit. I'm learning how to produce things. You know, like it took a real frame of mind. And then once I had that, that's when I started to feel the excitement.
Yeah.
I try not like, I you know, look at the analytics of what's going on, which is important. Yeah. But if it becomes that thing where it's all about the numbers, and I lose the passion for what I'm actually doing, I think that's a big red flag, and I'd need to correct that straight away. Like, I think it's the frame of mind and what you're doing.
It's hard. It's so hard as well, especially with like podcast numbers and stuff, because we're in such a growth hacking culture where it's like, check your analytics every day. You know, there needs to be incremental growth, blah, blah, blah. But especially in the creative fields, most of the time it doesn't really work like that. It mostly works like you put this out for 3 years and then you get a guest that's really important and it takes off and quadruples overnight.
Again, you know, there's another good example of that where they show like the 6S iceberg, what people see, the iceberg above the water, but most of it is below the water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not a linear graph most of the time. It's more of a curve. Yeah.
There's an example. There's a guy who makes YouTube videos. His name's Steve Dangle. So he's basically what he's doing. Yeah, I think it's his actual name. Anyway, he would watch his team, the Maple Leafs, play every game, and then he would do a fan reaction. He called it LFR, Leafs fan reaction, and he did that each game without fail. And now he's up to season 17 that he's been doing it, and he's gone, like, you watch his very first video, it's just him in his room, 30 seconds, like a hot take, and eventually he's building up now to the point where he's doing 20-minute videos with production. He's now like a common sports commentator. People know about him. He's built a following. He works in like the broadcasting, and he built that from the ground up. And that's why I think it doesn't take overnight success. For some it will, which is luck, whatever you want to call it, but you really got to look at like the groundwork and how the foundations were laid out. Because other people I've talked about who have done, you know, podcasts, they say, look at my old stuff, you just see how crap it was. But it's like the discipline of just releasing something, putting it out there, and then who knows what's going to happen.
It kind of relates back to your father's golden advice, putting it out like just consistently, one thing a day.
One thing a day, and it gets done eventually.
Well, it's like another sort of metaphor of it. It's like every episode you put out is like a lottery ticket. If you eventually buy enough lottery tickets, one will hopefully cash in. Yeah, not the perfect metaphor. Buying lottery long.
Not your strongest this episode,
but you get the point that I'm making. Like the more hard work and the more content you put out, the more you put the chances of getting luckier.
Yeah, you got to be in it to win it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah.
I remember what I was going to say.
Okay.
Going back to when I asked if it was for everyone, this putting yourself out there in the public eye, and then taking on board outside opinions, positive or negative. I think the sensitivity to those positive or negative opinions depends on your like level of self-confidence. And so putting yourself out there in the public eye by doing a podcast, singing songs, making music, seriously, I think everyone will have something in their head that they want to do but are instantly crushed by, oh no, that would be cringe, I get laughed at, maybe I want to learn violin, it'd be too cringe. Everyone will be like, oh, who do you think you are? You know, I want to play the sport, but like I'm going to suck, it's going to be so embarrassing. And so I think it is for everyone. And I think possibly the most effective activities that you can do on your own is in the public eye, and it just strengthens your self-confidence so much. I think the sense, if you're not very self-confident, the sensitivity to those positive and negative are going to be much greater. If you don't back yourself. If you don't back yourself, someone saying no, you're doing real well, you're going to like, oh, sweet. They said I'm doing well.
Mm.
I love that. But equally, on the other side, if someone says like, that's a fucking ridiculous idea, you'd be like, oh, instantly crushed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
that fosters it. Yeah, the more you do that, like you've
Yeah.
done many things like that, it just strengthens your self-confidence more.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I think, especially for men, this is kind of exposed for us and our relationships and dating lives. I think a lot of this kind of the current talks and narratives about it in society kind of stem from that initial kind of self-help seduction dating boom that kind of happened early 2000s. I'm talking like the game, that kind of thing, because that whole community was built around the idea of putting your self-worth on what women thought of you, and it didn't stick around. Like, it doesn't really exist anymore. Because the deeper that got, the more the guys realized, by putting all our eggs in the basket of what women think about us, we're not doing well with women. So let's fake behaviors that they don't care. We don't care what you think. And then they're like, oh, what if we actually just didn't care? And so, all those communities, like all the communities that Strauss talks about in the game, and other kind of literature from around that time, they don't really exist anymore. We still have kind of the fringes, we still have like the incel community and stuff, but there isn't a massive seduction community because it's pretty easy to put two and two together. Like, why fake the behavior that I'm okay with myself when I can just be okay with myself? And there's so many more benefits.
Yeah, it comes to an end. Like, you cap out all you can get from it. You kind of milk all you can milk from it pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah.
And
I've said this before. I would say the one thing that that sort of industry got right is the idea of, in their context, it was going up and talking to as many girls as possible in a single day. That's the same with putting content, whatever, putting yourself out to the world desensitizes you. You get comfortable doing it. That's the one thing that I think that industry got right.
That's the same thing. Yeah, doing one thing. It's the same concept of doing
just getting
one thing
comfortable
a day,
with
doing
putting yourself out there,
repetitions.
opening yourself up to the possibility of getting rejected, made fun of, mocked, whatever, and getting comfortable with it.
I think all the best ideas from that community are now the material of the self-help books that come out today.
Nice,
and all the worst ideas got thrown to like the incel community. And
it's a great way of putting
it. Those kind of circles, because the people who actually wanted the goal, they wanted to work on themselves, they wanted to get the result, they went on and they got the result. And everyone who was coming at it with ulterior motives, with hating women motives, got kind of banished to the Shadowlands. You know what I mean? For better or worse.
Yeah. I never thought
well
about
said.
it like that.
Yeah,
That's
it's very well said. Yeah.
Because
no, I agree. Sorry,
you're okay.
No, I just
reminiscing.
No. not necessarily reminiscing. It's just like, I think the way you articulate it was like you put it in a way that's like, oh yeah, I totally understand that, and just started
processing.
But it was just in slow motion, like the loading wheel was just like
not a solid state hard drive.
Do you spend much time reflecting on your own? Like, do you have like a meditation effectively times for yourself where you have no technology or anything on and you just think about these things?
I have been getting more into meditation, but more as a calming method as opposed to reflecting time. I think I just read a lot, so that kind of gives me time. I take long showers.
Nice.
That's
a
good way to
We love
do
our
it.
showers here.
Some of us like them cold too.
Not me. Only at the end.
Yeah, only at the end.
We better chunk through some of those other questions we had, Nav, I reckon.
Yeah, for sure.
Hit them with another one.
One of them we just wanted to talk about was like role models.
Yeah.
Are there any people that you would say have like influenced you particularly? Like, I know you were releasing recently, listening to a new album every day.
Yeah.
So in that sense, that you sorry, slurring my words here.
You're okay.
There are people that you listen to, like musically, that you take off that. But I mean, just general role models in life and morals and that sort of thing.
Yeah. That's kind of a hard. I think when I was younger, I fell into the trap of hyperfixating on a couple of people, and then I would, by trying to make myself as most like them as possible, lose myself in the process.
Yep.
I do like kind of the the Tony Robbins idea of modeling, looking at someone who you want their result and kind of modeling the success that it took to get there. So I would say, I try to take pieces from as much as possible. Obviously I have people that inspire me musically. When I'm working on the music, I have like entrepreneurs that inspire me, like marketing guys. But I always do try just not let my identity become too much of them as possible. Because I do find myself, if I sit down and jam like every episode of someone's podcast, then for like a week I'll be walking around like a business guy, all I care about is the dollars. And then that little sensitive part of me comes out and is like, but what if you made some sacrifices for the art of it? I'm like, okay, and then I'll listen to some TED Talks or some talks from like big art guys, and I'm like, I don't need entrepreneurship. I'm just going to be a starving artist for the rest of my life. That's what I'm going to do.
The perfect balance is going to be the best for you. I can see it.
Yeah, you've got to have that perfect balance. And
speaking about role models, I think it's possible that with the internet, where we obviously have so many more role models to choose from, and we can therefore pick and choose the best parts of each. I wonder if there'd be no way to really prove this, if previous generations pre-internet were essentially more focused on one role model. Like I know, like Michael Jordan was like a typical American boys role model, and I think it's probably far more dispersed now. And even role models that we do have that at the time that we immensely look up to, in a year's time that they can be irrelevant sometimes. A lot of people would say Andrew Tate is their, like late in the last year or so, Andrew Tate was their role model. Before that,
Jordan Peterson.
Elliot Holt.
Before that, it was, and they might not have role models, might not have as much longevity as they used to, and I wonder how that.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I would be interested to see kind of the dark, because you see these films from back in like the Beatles in their heyday. Streets swarmed with people of all genders, all ages, like massive crowds that we haven't really seen since, and people always attribute that to how amazing the Beatles were, who were amazing. But I wonder if that does kind of play, the fact that the news pipeline's delayed. For the music you wanted to listen to, you only really had the radio or actually going out and purchasing it. So it was less kind of scatterbrain. Oh, I love these 20 celebrities, and more like, oh, these are my 3 celebrities.
It could be quite related, in fact, to the the attention epidemic of tech. Like the attention spans are shortening. That could also apply to role models, I suppose. Equally as much.
Like social media now is kind of went from like a long version, like the vlog, like Casey Neistat would do 30-minute vlogs or whatever. Now it's like, no, we've got to get as much done we can, 15 seconds, like how-to video. Step 1, this is what I did. Step 2, then I did this and this. It's like sometimes you just need to slow it back down because you need to absorb the information that's going on. I just wanted to ask one question, because specifically in music, we have so many artists out there releasing things. Sometimes all it might take is one hit, and then that artist can live off the bank, like for the rest of their lives. Do you think that's like a good way to, not say good way to approach it, but like from someone, I guess, living middle class, thinking if all it took was one hit, then I could live off the royalties for the rest of my life. I'm set, can set my family up, blah, 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 blah. Or is it always about the constant, I need to do more?
I think when people think about one hit, they're doing the exact same thing with the iceberg. They're forgetting about everything that went into it beforehand. And I think there probably is a lot of merit to what a lot of artists that have that one hit talk about, kind of the feeling of emptiness, not living up to that hit after.
Vanilla Ice.
Because if you put all this work into building up, and then you have your hit and you're on top of the world, and then it comes back down, even though you've essentially achieved your goal, right? You had the hit. It's still, I don't know. I don't think aiming for like one big hit is probably,
because on that sense, like
sustainable.
Like you'll still be known. We still sing massive like one hit songs. You still know who they are, but Like,
but it's an internal thing, isn't it? It's the validation gets boring after a while. It's the idea of the actual creativity of the work. We've kind of a little bit different, but very similar actually. We've talked about like with retirement. I think a lot of people have this idea that retirement's going to be fun. They're going to spend all day on the beach.
Yeah, I reckon it's a big scam.
It's a massive scam. And then they're bored. It's very unfulfilling sitting on a beach all day for the vast majority of people. Work, assuming that they had a reasonably fulfilling job, people enjoy, feeling that they're doing something useful, creative, helping others, producing art. It is very much an internal thing. Humans, I think, need to be doing things, probably especially men, but certainly humans in general. You need to be crafting. You can't just be sitting on a couch all day or on a beach all day. It gets super boring and depressing very quickly. So I think it's very much an internal thing rather than just I
think that's why the positive, the responding to positive feedback and the negative feedback, I think that's why it's so hard for people to adjust to that, because in theory it sounds great, like, oh, stop caring about what people say across the board, no matter what, and I'll be free to do whatever I want and not be affected by people. But I think a lot of people don't make that step because of what's on the other side. If you stop caring like deeply about the positive and the negative, and you work hard to internalize that and kind of stay on top of that, the moment you step out that door, you might realize like, oh God, like I've been working this finance job for 10 years to make all this money so that I would have money so that people like me. And now that I don't care, I've just wasted the last 10 years of my life.
That is a nightmare to imagine happening. That feels, I imagine that fuels you, that thought of possibly, of you caving it, doing what everyone wants you to do that's safe and whatever, and then having that realization down the track. That must be so bad.
Scary.
Yeah,
I
scary.
think a lot of people have that early on when they go to university for something they don't want to study. I feel like that's kind of like a big thing.
I went through that.
Right. And so that's, was that kind of like a big wake up call for you?
The main reasoning, what I'd say, was to please my parents. It wasn't actually what I wanted to do. So I'm half Asian. Yeah. And I won't say, that's the underlying thing completely. Like, some cultures, you do things like you become a doctor to please your parents. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and so it was kind of like at least do something, like even if it's not what I want to do. Look, to take away some experiences from that, I enjoyed the social aspects of university. Not enjoying the post student loan, etc. But like, hey, I'm not going to let it dictate my life. Otherwise I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But it's not about that. It's like, well, I've been through that chapter. This is how I'm going to come out of that. And I mean, I'd like to say, not blowing my own horn here, but married, or didn't think I'd be married. Now own a home. Things are on the trajectory upwards. Nice. So it's like, I wouldn't even say it's a valley. Like, it's just a thing that I went through. Now here I am. Like, in 20 years time, 30 years time, when I retire, I'm not going to be thinking about that. It's like, well, I was just dumb, like a lot of other people are with money. I'm not the only one. People do silly things all the time.
It's important, I think. Like, I don't think, or if you are living like a flawless life in terms of you've taken no risks, you've never lost money, you've never made a bad decision, you're probably not taking enough risk at all. You're probably living a very safe life. All left school, went straight into a factory job, and you're just doing the super basic stuff. So the fact that you make mistakes, whether it be a bad business venture, a bad university experience, which did come with some positive experiences and certainly a hell of a lot of learnings, that's just part of life, isn't it? Same as bad breakups, all of it. It's just part, it's what makes life it is. And it makes the good experiences so much better when you've got that contrast.
Did you have a moment that you remember realizing that? You're like, oh shit, I got to get my A into G doing what I want to do. Do you remember a specific moment? Or I know from some of the footage from one of the music videos you've been recording with Alex for ages.
I mean, I've always had kind of that creative rule breaker streak in me. Not in like I wouldn't even call it a rule breaker, because I've always been I would say quite like a respectful person, and I'm not, I don't really like picking fights with people or anything like that, but I would say maybe I just like try to push boundaries when given the opportunity. And so I did that all the way throughout school, because I didn't really enjoy school that much. And yeah, I think I was very lucky to get involved with a couple of guys in my last year of high school who were big into self-help.
And it's early to get into it.
Early.
Yeah. And I'm so thankful, because otherwise I would probably be doing something I really would not like doing right now. Because there's no way I was going to university. After the horror that was high school, there's no way I was going to university. And so, yeah, I got really lucky just because of my camera skills. There's this guy, Owen, who, real big into self-help, and he wanted to do like the YouTube channel thing and needed like someone who could like film and edit. I was like really the only one in the school that was known for that because of all this creative stuff. And he was like, hey, help me out. And I just got so like absorbed into his world. I'm like, how is this guy so headstrong, so calm, so great? Like, he's really got his head screwed on. And so he like slowly introduced me to, I don't know, the totems of self-help. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The earlier the better as well. I know.
100%.
Everyone, I think that's any advice you give to anyone younger listening. It's like the sooner, even if it seems cringe, it probably seems real cringe. Like a lot of the self-help stuff. Honestly, the earlier you do it, the better. I think that advice is
the same of taking risks.
Yeah,
whether it
save
be
money as well.
Content or starting a business.
Do it young.
I think
now.
like that's my biggest regret, was not like starting a business when I was in school, for multiple reasons, because it's much easier back then with less competition online, and just also the fact that the repercussions are very, very minor at that age. You very much got a large safety net, but I sort of was close. Like I was selling counterfeit skull candies at one point.
I remember.
Yeah, so like I was in the ballpark of what I ended up doing for a good part of the time after school, but nobody had never had that sort of guiding hand. Who said, why don't you start like a legitimate business and start selling this stuff? The younger you start, I think, in pretty much all facets, self-help, business, making content, it's for multiple reasons.
I'm definitely I'm glad I started early on. I feel like it helped ingrain a lot of important stuff in me. For a couple of years, I was I went through like a pretty horrific breakup, which is mainly what the album is about that we put out last year. And so that kind of threw my head off for a bit, because it's, in comparison, at least for me, I know it's probably the opposite for a lot of people, I found it very easy to break away from my parents, like the expectations, the school system, like the expectation I'd be going to like university, and like kind of like that 9-to-5 life. I found very easy to break away from.
You have a reason why, or just naturally?
Just naturally. I think I was just kind of like a creative dude. Yep. But that that draw to be. Because of that, I was kind of lacking a sense of purpose, and I feel like in a lot of ways I made this girl the purpose of my world. And not only do I think that's probably the thing that led to the downfall, it also meant that I was making decisions for quite a few years that were short-term focused, and I didn't set myself up for right now. In a lot of ways, I feel like in the last couple of years, I've been like really restarting and doing what I actually wanted to do, as opposed to quickly building skill sets so I could try to make some money quickly, so I could try to do this quickly. Like, I've been thinking about making music basically since I finished high school. It only happened last year. That's ridiculous.
Do you are you quite appreciative now at the other end for that experience making you who you are today? Like,
no, we're not at appreciative yet. We'll get there. Okay. We're not at appreciative.
Right. I say that because I often have felt it's a real weird feeling of almost guilt, not guilt and not longing, but for living such a perfect sheltered life, and hearing stories, again, it might be like an iceberg kind of thing, but hearing stories of people who credit this like horrible, awful thing that happened to them for where they are today, and something, and I don't want to get like cancer or anything, but I want like, you can manufacture your own challenges to a certain extent, but sometimes the biggest ones that you would never choose to risk yourself have the biggest impact. Like we're talking about two ends of the spectrum, So it's kind of like not a jealousy, not a longing, not guilt for not having it, but I'd love like the challenge almost. But I think, you know what I mean?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, we make our own growth like opportunities. So I would say, because I just gave the example of how much like that breakup affected me, but at the end of the day, it was just a breakup. Mm-hmm. Like I'm the one that made it such a big event that changed me emotionally in my life. When I was in year 12, moving into year 13, my mum passed away. From motor neuron disease, which is what Stephen Hawking had.
Right.
It's like ALS. And so it was kind of a drawn out process over a couple of years. Started losing motor function, then the ability to speak. So she was wheeling around our house in a wheelchair. It was pretty, like, as you can imagine, all your muscles start failing. It gets pretty gross and pretty graphic very quickly. And that was like in my last years at high school. And I feel kind of guilty saying this, but that for a lot of people would have been like something that's really life-changing for them. And it had not a lot of effect on me.
Oh, it's good to be honest.
Do
you have any theories like why it didn't have a big impact?
No, I mean,
just
it's just I don't know what about my circuit. Like obviously, I was sad that my mum died, of course, but I wasn't. It didn't make me rethink my life. It didn't make me challenge what I've been doing or challenge what my family did.
To be fair, and I can't speak because both my parents are alive, but I can't overly comment on it. But from things in the ballpark, grandparents dying, animals dying, it's terrible at first. Yeah. But humans, you pretty quickly get over it. Yeah. And we've had this conversation before, like, once you're dead, you're pretty soon forgotten. Like you don't know your great grandparents, do you?
In terms of great grandparents, you're soon
parents,
you'll be
you'll remember, but still, life goes on. Yeah. And now, as I say, it might be different. I can't tell how I'll react when my parents die because obviously that's much more significant than a grandparent.
Yeah.
But I imagine it'll be really shit at first, as it always is, but life just goes on, and humans are very adaptable.
Again, it's kind of that's like the obvious like rational side of it, I suppose. But then, like we're talking about with outside perspectives, you're battling not non-rational feelings, I suppose.
Yeah.
I just want to say, ask? It wasn't like a sense of relief in a way, or was it just like it really just didn't affect you?
I mean, I definitely had feelings.
Yeah.
Over it, it wasn't like I wasn't affected whatsoever. Yeah. But I think it's just, I just wanted to kind of point out the comparison between something that for a lot of people is very minor. It was like a breakup, and people have divorces or they're engaged and they break up. It's like this was just a relationship at the end of the day. Probably wasn't even that long of a relationship, but something about the way I was functioning chose to make this a very significant point of my life. Meanwhile, this horrific thing that happened to me and my family,
right.
I just, dealt with it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, and it's good that you can very sort of you can realize that yourself. And I don't think there's some people might be like, that's a terrible way, like you should feel way worse about, but that's real to you.
Yeah,
and I always say
it's valuable. Sorry, just valuable you saying that because it's not the typical. I think humans we can't think of. Well, I can think of a personal example. Sometimes very little things can make me extremely anxious and panicked. Something as stupid as like when I'm ordering a coffee and they don't give me like a number or a name, and I'm like, oh no, like I'm gonna make a form.
It's the ADHD.
Yeah, it's super small, super stupid, but that makes me super panicked. But then something massive like the earthquakes, for example, I'm fine. I almost thrive. And so that's everything. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. So much like you, in theory, your mum dying should be a way more traumatic than a bad breakup. But people deal with different things differently. So
that's probably what I would like say to you. It's like you're feeling the sense of like, I'm disappointed that I haven't really faced a big challenge in my life yet. But I feel like just because, you had like a sheltered childhood or whatever, doesn't mean something completely random is going to come. Like, for all you know, the podcast blows up and it's that sense of having to stop and take photos with people in the streets that really like challenges you in a way that you could never expect.
Yes, that's a great example, because you see that with, I guess, either introverted or anxious artists who blow up and then they really don't deal. Like, that's a big deal to them is bumping into people at the mall because they're super anxious about it.
Yeah.
Whereas they have what seems like, like something extremely challenging job being an artist that other people, think, well, if they can make great music, they must be able to deal with social functions as well. But that's it. Like, it's kind of like a great example of that is Mac Miller, right? He's an amazing artist, but he was super socially anxious, I think, and a lot you picked up on a lot of that in his lyrics. And that's it. People can have different strengths, and it's the same. Another good example might be, I can't think off the top of my head, but someone who's like a great rugby player, they might be socially anxious off the field as well. And it's like, wow, they're like a warrior. They can go out there and play rugby and get bruises and cuts and scars, but then they can't deal with something that seems like a basic part. And I say I've been very open about this with myself. I struggle with relationships. I don't do relationships well. Yet you guys might look at me and just, geez, like, he does all this crazy stuff for a living, bets on sports for a living. Like, it's crazy, right? I should have it all figured out because I've got something that seems so hard to do, yet such basic things like having a girlfriend to me is an enormous daunting thing because I don't manage relationships well. So
it gets me almost emotional just thinking about it because it makes me so like joyful to like learning how different everyone is, and that's like the fun of life basically, and I mean the podcast in general. It just gives me like real deep joy, like hearing that how different everyone is.
And so cool. I think it's healthy that we can be open and honest about these things, because that's it. That might be the sort of thing that other people are, oh, I'm feeling this way, but I can't say it because people will be like, that's not right.
I feel like an honesty vampire. When someone tells me something real honest, I like thrive on it. Like,
yes, I love it too. Because I think that's like one of the worst things about being an adult is so many people are so reserved.
Yeah.
They do the small talk. They don't tell you how you doing. Fine. And tell it, And so it's very refreshing when people can act, especially for guys. I think it's struggle more than females, but still humans in general struggle with having these deep, open conversations. So it's very refreshing when you do have them.
For me personally, it's like having just recently, like, I've only been living at home for the past couple of years now, just bought a house. It's like just learning the things like paying for power and just the day-to-day things of like admin. It's just like, oh no, something's happened now, I've got to go get my car fixed, but I'm working on Monday to Friday, like, just things like that. It's like, how do I navigate the ins and outs of life? But then I think now I get like a real sense of when I've ticked off something I've never done before. It's like, I'm actually doing it. Like, it becomes a little bit easier each time.
Yeah.
So, example is I'd come downstairs from my room. There's always food in the pantry. Now it's like, no, we've got to buy our own food at the supermarket. If you want to make something, well, you could go and buy food like at a restaurant or something, but it's not easily affordable. So now I've got to learn to cook, and I could never cook, but now it's just like learning little bits by little bits. It's like you kind of gamify it in a way.
Yeah,
it's like it's like RuneScape. It's like now I'm level 5 cooking. I'm moving up level 6. Okay, now I'm level 7 self-help, like motivation or whatever, things like that.
It's funny how much you can gamify life. It makes you think about the simulation. Anything else to add before I go completely different topic?
I think,
that was swing it on us.
Yeah, I had another thing which is kind of not really related, but it was just, we were talking about putting yourself out there with you for creative things, but then you have AI that's coming into the mix now. Like, I just want to know just a short tidbit. What do you think about AI and creation?
It kind of links into my question.
Does it? Oh, sweet.
Mind meld.
AI is very interesting. I know a lot of people are, but I'm not too worried about AI.
Neither.
Okay.
I think it'll be fine. It's just another tool in the toolbox. if anything, I feel like, just going off a hunch, I feel like it's going to be a hot minute before we really see it kick up. Yeah. I feel like it's going to do the same thing that a lot of other emerging technologies have done, being VR, being cryptocurrency, where we have this massive surge, kind of this hype period for a couple of years, and then it dies down, and that's when the developers really get to work for the next kind of cycle. Yeah. Could be wrong about that. But yeah, I'm not worried about AI.
I think the SBI was like, because last week before we started recording, Daniel was showing there's the Drake AI song with The Weeknd, and just how
really good.
Close
Game over
it sounded like. Wow, you wouldn't know unless you actually knew. Like, you could probably pass it off as this is his actual music.
Yeah, you could, and that will be a challenge. But then the other aspect of music is the live performances, isn't it? And AI is not. It's not going to replace. It's not going to be quite the real deal, is it? Yeah. So there's another side to music, that creative side of actually going to a concert with diehard fans, getting in. That's much more. I know the bread and butter is probably making the albums and putting them out on the internet and stuff, but.
I mean, that's why I feel like, this is the one thing that I feel like I really know, because it's rearing its head again. It's if AI magically is able to, make an album from an artist, it sounds exactly like the real thing. It's got the depth of real human writing. They could even do the live shows. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, who are you making the music for? If you're making it for other people, you're fucked, because the AI can do it. You're making it for yourself and not other people's opinions. Nothing changes. Yeah, it's the exact same thing.
I think a lot of people who maybe have concerns about AI as well might be there might be a correlation between like a lack of self-confidence or just knowing who you are through these activities that you're embracing the cringe. Yeah. If I feel like we all have quite a good sense of who we, like the human nature of us. If you put all your value into I work at this finance job, that is me, the classic like egoic stuff, like I own this car, I do this, blah blah blah, then AI could be more of a threat. When it's like, it's not going to change AI is not going to change me, who I am. If I lose my job, I'll still be me. It's fine. I think it's comforting almost.
That's a great way of putting it. I think that's probably the biggest fear for people, is losing their jobs. Yeah. And that'll be the same in the industrial revolution.
You're not your job. Most of the time.
But it'll be the same as any major sort of technological change throughout history. People would have been up in arms when, car factories are being automated. Yeah. Detroit, for example, it's an absolute dump now. It was once, a thriving place because they made all the cars. Now it's all done by robots. So it's stuff like that. People would have been up in arms, but that's just part of life. And I think you can probably relate to this maybe more than these other two can, as being sort of self-employed, entrepreneurial. You just learn to adapt and keep, as like I said off the pod, some businesses, they come and they go. Whereas a lot of people, I think, who work 9 to 5, they look at it as this is a thing that it's their God-given right to have a job.
Yeah, it anchors them.
And have it indefinitely. Yeah. The idea of pivoting, changing jobs, losing jobs as like highly traumatic, and whereas an entrepreneur, self-employed, whatever you want to call it, you just learn that as things come and they go. It rains and it shines, and you just have to constantly be adapting, because if you're not adapting, then you're going to go out of business. So I think a lot of people, it'll be very controversial to the unionists out there, need to start looking at 9 to 5s as not actually as secure as they are. Yeah. There's something that can come and go, just as a business can come and go.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a little controversial, but would it be the worst thing in the world? Surely that AI is just going to speed up the plan that we're moving to anyway, which is, universal basic income. Like, people actually not having to work to afford things to live. Like, this is kind of a society that a lot of people have been imagining anyway. Okay. And so if a lot of jobs get taken away, that seems like a good excuse for people to start actually thinking about what they want to do in their lives, as opposed to being so tied into
that's the dream of Karl Marx.
That
is the what communism was meant to be. Well, that you had enough free time, enough resources that today you can be a pianist, and tomorrow you can be a rugby player. You could just constantly do whatever you want and express yourself. So and I think that's a noble goal.
Yeah.
I think back then not practical, but that's right. If we get to a point where
we might have to.
Yeah, we might have to, and also hopefully we're so rich enough, resourceful enough, whatever you want to call it, where AI robots are doing everything for us, that you don't need to go out into work in a factory to be productive, because the robots are all doing that, and there's enough money, resource to go around for everyone, that you don't have to do that. At the moment, that's a necessity for most people, because you don't get paid you get paid a little bit to sit at home, but not enough to thrive. Well, hopefully one day.
I think you do get enough to thrive. I think a lot of people who get it maybe mismanaging.
We're talking
money.
about being on a benefit.
Yeah.
I mean, what is it, like $180 a week or something? It's not much.
If let's say AI's got rid of all the practical jobs, and all that's left is to do, like, pursue artistic endeavors for yourself, do you need that much money to do that stuff?
No, but my point is, you're looking at, say, at the moment, not everyone, if everyone was on a benefit, it wouldn't work, society would collapse, because people have to go out and work, be productive to pay taxes. So some people can live on a benefit. Right. So the point is that hopefully society will be wealthy enough, resourceful enough that one day that we can all sit at home, because the robots are out picking the apples for us. The food, that all stuff has to be done largely manually at the moment. But hopefully AI will create enough wealth for everyone that you can sit at home and everything. All the work is being done for free by AI slaves.
I guess the thing is, what would happen to the wealth that currently exists? Like, you're going to go and disperse the rich and take all their assets and spread it all out, or how would that how would that work?
I don't know. Look, I'm not.
It's easier said in like a theoretical sense.
It's very much.
But then it's like it's the implementation is always the hardest part to.
I think you'll be an optimist. You're an optimist. I'm more of a narcissist.
Thanks for being honest.
What's the word I'm looking for?
Pessimist.
Pessimist.
I'm definitely an optimist.
AI, I think it's. I think it's way too early to stress about it. Deepfakes, they're a little bit more concerning.
Because I think that's where I was sort of going for, like, in that sense.
So perhaps the solution to deepfakes is better education for all. Now, that won't, I don't mean in terms of being able to distinguish them, but people falling for them and being like,
you're talking about scams.
Scams. Like, people see a deepfake of the Prime Minister saying something terrible, like you're allowed to kill anyone tomorrow for a day, or
there's
whatever.
a nuclear bomb coming now. You need to kill Luke.
So people perhaps need to be educated not to fall for everything they see on the internet, because that's kind of how these things happen at the moment, don't they? People, disinformation as they call it, people make up something on Facebook and then gullible people believe it. So people perhaps need to be trained to not believe everything they see, do their research, like check the official government website. If you see a deep fake or a video of the Prime Minister saying something nuts, go to like the official government website and see if there's a news release that says what he said in the video.
Like internet etiquette, like
exactly,
like cleanliness.
Exactly. Yeah. So perhaps that's the antidote to deep fakes. They're gonna happen. But teach people to do their due diligence before believing it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, we are going to have to see I feel like we are going to have to see a bit of a change in culture around how quickly we get upset about things. Because now all you really need is a video. You post it on Twitter. Oh, here's Daniel saying
he's a narcissist.
And that's enough. That's enough evidence now to have a smoking gun, because it's a video. But as deepfakes rise, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen in culture, or if we're going to start developing tools to fight it, or legislation.
You would hope that there can be something, how, I don't really know how, but I believe like the NSA and stuff at the moment, they can, go deep into the information behind the video and see
the zeros and the ones.
Yeah, the zeros and the ones, to see if this was made up by some dude in his mum's basement, or if it was actually posted by Daniel. Hopefully there might be a way of, somehow making that accessible that everyone can. I don't know, but
I mean, I guess the big one that is most probably talked about is like Chat GPT. I can see the negatives and the positives to both. Like, for example, when it first came out, one thing I just thought of, okay, I'll go into my fridge, what have I got? Give me a recipe that I can cook with this. It's like, that's a positive thing. Positive. Like, but then if it's programmed or whatever to like spread misinformation or bias to a political party, and it starts disrupting, like,
it gives you a recipe to cook, and the last ingredient you don't have, it's on purpose.
No, for example, like if there was a bias for example, then it takes away that democratic aspect. Then that might be like the negative, like, okay, this isn't actually what we thought it would be.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to look at it.
It's one of those ones where
we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and I think that comes and goes all through history. AI or not, you get regimes that are biased one way or another and can dictate the way, Nazi Germany, for example, can change the way an entire country is run. That's just part of history. There are people who are going to try and force their worldview and ideology and habits on you one way or another. Mm-hmm. Now, hopefully, eventually, humans will overcome the desire to do that. As that's the way I think the people theorize that aliens will be so advanced that they don't have wars and biases and things like that anymore. So that you just have to hope that we eventually, and I think we're improving, because I mean, yes, the biases are still around, but if you look, as they there's never been a more peaceful time to live. There's still wars going on, but relatively speaking, it's a very calm and peaceful time in history. So I think we're nowhere near the finished product, but we are taking strides into sort of becoming one, as they call it, globalization. So again, people look at that as a negative and say, it's all a scam. It's the elites are running whatever. But I don't know.
But then globalization welcomes things like different foods and cuisines and things like you can eat.
Exactly.
Now you can go, I feel like Turkish tonight. I'm going to go I feel like Greek. I feel like
it must suck.
Italian. I'm going to order
if you
pizza.
live in a truly like racist country, it must suck, like the food. One type of food.
Yeah,
it's a real civilian opinion. Like the food will be mean for globalization.
And so many other positives. There are some drawbacks, I guess. I can't really think of many off the top of my head. Maybe localized job losses, like in New Zealand. Factory job loss and stuff, as everything in America is it's all outsourced to China and Vietnam and India and stuff like that. But I think overall, long term, that will create more wealth for everyone. But also just there's so many other positives, like the jobs that it creates, the accessibility, even just like the fact that it's so easy to like travel around the world to most countries. You just need with a New Zealand passport, you can go to most places with a few clicks, a few checks, no massive process, and there's just so many positives. I think this will be interesting to look back on in 20 years. Will be when it's Terminator world. Hit him with another question now. We've got plenty more, don't we? We won't get through them all.
No, probably not. It's fine. Just we were talking. You said earlier, one of the things you said, I don't think I'd ever be able to work a regular job in my life, going forward. But like, have you had that experience growing up? Like, have you ever worked just a standard job?
I've worked a bunch of shitty jobs.
Right.
Some of them weren't too bad, to be fair. Yeah, I've done a whole bunch of stuff. I worked retail. Yeah. I worked at a car place. I worked at a postage place. A whole across the board.
Yeah, because like if we all had the desire, like every single one, to do something creative or whatever, there still has to be jobs that need to be filled by certain people. Like we may look down on McDonald's workers, but like someone's got to do it, and we're thankful for them that they do it. Yeah. So like,
should be more thankful.
If we're talking about universal basic income being the thing, then what are we going to We'll lose our purpose eventually, will we not?
Well, there's an argument to that, and sorry, I'll let you answer that in a minute. But there would be that argument to that. But I think you can argue that in the current world that most people are struggling with purpose as it is, working jobs that they don't really care for. Right. So I think that's already an issue. But you give your take on that.
No, I mean, I think I agree with that. I think we are miserable, and then we go looking for a purpose to fulfill us. This is just kind of what we do. And for the first time in history, that purpose isn't find food so we can survive.
Yes. You know what I mean? I said if there was a war tomorrow, it would give everyone a grand purpose. It'd be terrible, but you'd soon, you'd band together with your mates and neighbours real quick.
Yeah, you need something like you mentioned before, Nav, just doing your day-to-day life, and it feels like it gives you something to do. It gives you like a purpose. Like, I have to do this, fix my car now, because otherwise I can't get to work. And that shit comes up every day, and yeah, we need a purpose. And I think related to the role models thing, with many role models with the internet now, I've said before that we live such a luxurious life now. We can just pick and choose.
Exactly.
Like we're in a post-truth world, they say. Yeah. So you can, on the positive side of that, you can pick and choose whatever ideology you want. You can believe COVID isn't real, live your life like that. If it works out, doesn't, you can change to another worldview. You can be a Christian, you could be a Muslim, you could be a Satanist if you want. You can really pick and choose. And I think that reality will check you. So to see if your chosen worldview is going to line up. If it doesn't, you can shop around, have an existential crisis, shop around. But I think we're going to have to figure out some brand new ones, or like a synthesis of all of the current ones.
Yeah, I think we will. We have it built into us. We don't have a purpose. We're miserable. And because we're miserable, we're like, oh shit, I got to fix this. Yep. And so we go looking for a purpose. I think we go through kind of periods where a lot of people don't have a purpose. And then other people see those people without a purpose. They go, oof, I don't want to become that. And so, there is kind of like there's
to avoid that.
Exactly. It kind of fulfills itself. So I have a hard time kind of envisioning a future where it doesn't work itself out in the end. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because every single person wants that. So it's unlikely that, unless worst case scenario, the AI, which doesn't want that, has so much control that it kind of enslaves everyone. That's the apocalyptic, super, super pessimistic view. But yeah, since every human being wants purpose, whether it's nefarious or not, that's a common factor throughout. So I think, we'll always have that, because we'll always be manufacturing the world in that way so that it can satisfy at least some of us.
Yeah.
Because if you found your purpose in what your call on this earth is to do, how do you measure that, and how would you think to measure that in success? So we've talked about success in the past, and that can look like so many different things. If you're aspiring to a goal, well, what's to say this is the benchmark? Like, can you then go further? Or it's probably quite a broad question, but like, how would you define success, I guess, in your life if you're trying to get content out there? Is it about numbers, or is it about like, I'm actually enjoying what I'm doing, or what does success
look like to you, Lucas?
I think success is so different for so many people. I do feel like in most cases, especially men, don't feel very good when they've achieved their goal. I feel like they get a bit of a buzz sometimes for 12 hours, 24 hours, 3 days, a month, and then you get the retirement slump. Oh God, what's next?
Yep.
And so, what I think, it's so hard to define what success is, because it's so different for everyone. I definitely know people who I would consider successful because they're happy and full of joy and laughing and wouldn't change their life for the world, that are living lives that would make me want to kill myself. And so, I think it's just, it's so different. I think all it really is just like living in a way where you're not pretending to be successful. You know what I mean?
Just being comfortable
just
with
being
the day-to-day life, or just like, I'm actually enjoying living, or not so much. Like for me, so I guess the thing that people do at the start of the year, they make resolutions. This is what I'm going to achieve.
Yeah.
And so I never used to. I think that was cringe. I used to think it was cringe. I'm like, oh, why do people do this? Do the same thing. People say they want to lose weight, go to the gym, and then start of February the gym's empty, etc. But it really took this year for me to actually say, no, these are some goals that I want to do, and I'm actually going to stick to them as best as I can.
Yeah.
And try and make the discipline. So, like, one example, I'm trying to learn a language. 145-day Duolingo streak, just putting it out there.
Woo.
But like, like, I guess I find now just successful in like finding each day I've actually just done bit by bit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to look at the grand picture. Like, even if I'm not fluent in this, like, I'm actually enjoying the process.
Yeah.
I'm learning bit by bit, getting better and better, and then eventually my hope is that I'd be able to speak to someone in their native tongue in their own country.
Yeah.
So it's like that's the goal, but then after that, like still don't know what that would look like.
Yeah.
You know, do I continue or do I move to the next thing? Or there's just so many things we can do. So, how do you find
that's kind of the critical thing, isn't it? I think it's a misconception. People think, I learned this language. That was my massive goal, and then I achieve it, and then it's like, oh, now what? So that's kind of the critical thing. Is it's the journey, not the destination.
Yeah.
I think that's true of everything. So you've always got to sort of have, whether it be the same goal or new goals, depending on, you know, how massive you can stretch out one goal across your entire life. It can be that. If it's little things like learning a language, that's probably only going to take you 2 or 3 years to be completely fluent. So you go on to another language.
That's if you break it down the numbers, it's like
you just have to keep finding things to do, because it's the process. It's the journey that really is. That's the key. Getting your hands dirty.
I think it's easy to look at it in that kind of self-development framework, but this kind of applies to like micro stuff in life as well. Like people don't think about it as a goal, but when you're looking after a kid,
right? Yeah.
Your goal is that they make it to adulthood and are, you know, fully grown adults, healthy, safe, hopefully brought up well. And so, you know, when kids leave the home, it's like a big deal for the parents, and a lot of them feel that kind of emptiness. You know, what is it? Empty nest syndrome, right? And it's that same principle.
Same cycle.
It's the same cycle. We just think of it as something different for some reason, but it's not. It's just, you know.
It's even common postnatal depression in women. So just even because that's a journey in itself, that 9 months of they're pregnant, they'll make lots of friends through that process, through the, I think they call them antenatal classes, stuff that they go to. And then
probably getting lots of praise, like, oh my God, this is so
they'll be
precious.
getting lots of, whether it praise or just attention and caringness, and everyone's interested, and there'll be gifts and stuff like that. And then once that comes to an end, even though they've got another journey, that in itself was its own journey, and that's come to an end, and that can be deeply, well, obviously, as I say, it's a real thing. Postnatal, my sister had it big time. One of my sisters.
Yeah, my wife works with people who go through postnatal depression.
Yeah, so that again, it's another form in a context you'd never really think of, but that's a form of a journey and a goal. The goal is to give birth to a healthy child, and there's a lot of work that goes into that 9 months. Another really good example is and probably I think my favorite example is professional athletes, because generally speaking, if you're playing like a physical sport like rugby, American football, you have a very short career. 10 years if you're lucky. Some can push the boundaries, Tom Brady, and maybe make it 20, but it's only a fraction of your life.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and you've seen, I don't know if you follow it much, but he tried to retire and then he came back. He's retired again, but that's it. It's all about the journey in that.
Yeah.
And then what happens after that stops. A lot of these guys, if they've been, especially in American sports or football in Europe, they've got more than enough money for a lifetime. But that's it. It's not the money. The money is a little thing, but it's they actually loved playing sport, and it was like, as we've talked about before, it's a form of battle. It's like a war. You're going out to beat the other team. On a micro scale, it's a war, and that gives you massive purpose. And then what happens when that all comes to an end? A lot of athletes struggle at the end of their career,
particularly if you'd never made the highest goal, like to win the cup or whatever. You know, it's like I went through this long, arduous career, and now I haven't achieved what I set out to achieve. And it's not super common, but there have been cases of athletes who have killed themselves as a direct cause of that. It's heavy. Much more common will just be people who struggle with depression, just because of a loss of purpose, because it's pretty hard to get much more of a purpose than that. The military would be another one. Again, generally short careers. And
Lucas, do you reckon? Do you ever think, because you seem to cycle through, not that this is a bad thing, cycle through your challenges and your cringe quite fast, so you're repeating the cycle, it seems like, a lot faster than everyone else.
Yeah. Do
you think that has given you, like a sports career lasts almost a lifetime, so they do that whole cycle once in that respect, and you're basically cycling lots. So do you think
say a sports career lasts almost a lifetime?
Yeah.
I think that's wrong. That's what I'm
Okay,
saying.
yeah.
Unless you're in a like
longer than
bowls or something.
darts.
Point being-
darts. That could,
Darts
but
is a
like
good
a
example.
physical sport, it's
Yeah,
a very
yeah.
short career.
Point being longer at least than
Right.
how often.
Yeah.
I'm talking about
years
Lucas
and
specifically.
decades.
Yeah.
Do
Well,
you
a
think
lot
that's-
of them, they do their sports career stuff and then they become like entrepreneurs and investors, right?
Yes, so
I
I
guess
think that's
another
the
kind of
key is
cycle.
getting that runway, like looking ahead
Yeah.
before you retire, and that's what they're already getting business ventures going, so that they've, like Tom Brady has done that now. He's got like a clothing line and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting that, do that well ahead of time, because it's much better to prepare yourself 2 or 3 years out rather than retire and then go through that. Oh my god, I've got nothing to do, and then fall into a slump, and much harder to get yourself out of it. But
I just want to clarify as well for anyone listening and for you guys, whenever I do say cringe, I'm here to change the definition of cringe. Like nerd, like calling someone a nerd as an adult, I feel like is
not
way
really.
more of a compliment.
yes,
And I fully
yeah,
mean it as a
100%,
compliment.
Yeah.
Same with cringe. Like I envisage a world where someone's trying some new skill,
Yes,
and real
well,
bad at it. I'm like, dude, that's
I
so
think
cringe.
The
Good
flip,
for you.
The flip side of cringe is it's authentic. You're being
Yeah.
authentic.
Yeah. That's what I mean. That is
Yeah,
what I mean.
So yeah, not being cringe, playing it safe, is you're probably not being authentic, and that's it. I think being authentic is it's a huge part of being human.
Yeah, that is effectively what I mean by when I say
No,
cringe. It's
cool.
being
No, but
authentic.
to clarify,
Anything else to add?
Well, sorry, what was the,
I don't know
how
what
did
the
you start
question
the
was.
question off?
I was going to say, so you're
Cycling
through events and goals, achieving goals, new goal,
Yeah.
achieving. And I feel like perhaps, would you say that in between, after achieving a goal and starting a new one, that a lot of people find very hard, professional athletes included, that just practicing that cycle, thinking about all the stuff you do more meta, practicing that cycle is like a muscle you've trained, and you can switch quicker than most people?
Yeah, I
because
think
of that?
so. I think it's very easy. It's easier for me to start and finish projects because of that. Because I have experience kind of starting the cycle and finishing the cycle. I'm still dealing with the in-between. I have no idea what to do with myself in the in-between, and I can see that being a real big problem in the future.
Right.
Like if I have some kind of, like if I have a family and I have a family commitment, meaning that I can't make a career move or stay up for 30 hours playing Pokemon as a joke, like I'm worried that's going to rear its head in a really ugly way.
Yep,
Yes,
that's something
hopefully
I'm going through a little bit.
I guess I was going to say
makes
hopefully the family would give you that sense of purpose, but it's
Yeah.
real murky because we know, have heard or seen stories of people who've sort of shut themselves down to go and get married, and then it doesn't work out, get divorced, gets messy.
Yeah.
So I think you just have to really know yourself. I think this problem is it's a lot too easy
Drake, you gotta know yourself.
to like sort of just, a lot of people think they need to get married and have kids. As I've said this before, I never say never, but certainly I don't think I'm going to get married and have kids. Certainly not any time in the near future. Could happen, because you never know what can happen. But a lot of people might fall into sort of a similar category to myself there. I don't know, whatever they're a traveler. They love going all around the world. That's what gives them this sense of purpose. They make videos about it, whatever. But they turn 30 and they think, oh, geez, I better have a family, better get married and have a family, because that's like a societal pressure. And then it all goes pear-shaped. I think you've got to really know yourself and really do some thinking. Don't just like walk into those situations. You've got to really think, do I want to get married? Do I want to have kids?
Yeah, buying a house is a big loose around.
Yeah, a lot of people just do that stuff way too easily. Have kids, especially having kids outside of marriage. Just it's way too easy to have a kid by not wearing protection, and a lot of people fall into that, and it gets messy.
I think one thing, looking into the future is quite a hard exercise to do. So, I mean, you would say it's a good example to have 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year goals. But realistically, like, who wants to think of what they're going to, like, the 10 years? You know, it's like, where do I set myself up now to be where I want to be in 10 years? It's a really hard thing to comprehend. And then when you're thinking in the days and the days that we live in, like, in real time, it's like, well, am I doing the right thing? Is this actually helping me to be where I want to be? I think one thing you talked about, David, you brought up, like, Lucas, you said commitment. Like, if you were to have a family, it's like a challenge that I'm going through now, being married. It's like all these things that I loved doing when I was single / just dating, I had the time, but it's like, no, I actually still need to learn and how to balance like spending time with my wife and doing things like that, and balance like what I want to do. And it can feel like, man, there's just not enough hours in the day unless I sacrifice on sleep. But then sleep just kills, you sleep deprived, it kills everything.
So it will literally kill you.
That's true. So I think it's all just a bit of a balance act.
And so as I say, you just have to really know yourself. As I say, like, I'm happy to admit a big part of the reason why I would not want a relationship, certainly not the only reason, but I'm very selfish in terms of my time. I'm not willing to sacrifice my sort of lifestyle at this point in my life.
Honest.
And a lot of people would say that's not a good thing or negative, but it is what it is. It would be much better than me pretending that that's not the way and getting into one of those messed up relationships where everyone gets hurt because there's no strong foundation. So at this point in my life, I'm way too selfish with my time and my own endeavors to consider a serious relationship.
That's a lot healthier than dating someone and just expecting them to slot into your life perfectly. You know what I mean? Because it is like such a big commitment and time sink, and it's worth it, I hope.
Time sink.
Love you, baby.
It sounds negative. Yeah.
It's like one thing that people have been saying after getting married, it's like, oh, when are the kids going to happen? And it's like,
it's another societal pressure.
It's a societal pressure. It's like there's an expectation on you that you've done this, now you have to move on to the next thing, or there's like a timeline to it. We're trying to march to the drum of other people isn't the right thing to do. And so like if you want to travel, then the next thing people say is, oh, you better get all the traveling done before you have kids because you're not going to be it's like, well, that's not necessarily true. Like I know a couple in like church community that we've been to, their purpose, or what they worked towards, was so that they could go on holiday with their kids and travel. And their kids, fortunately, they've been to like 45 countries in the world.
Wow.
I think that's amazing. Jealous. Like, that's so cool. Like, but like, why do people just continue to like, I guess, have the need to have a say in your life? But then at the same time, the people you respect, you want to take in what they say. They're people that mold you and I guess shape you to the person you are, but then you don't want to completely shut yourself off.
It's kind of related to what we were saying earlier, where you've got to say, with the podcast example, you've got to listen to the criticism somewhat to know how you're dealing with it. You've got to listen to your close one's opinions somewhat.
I think we've sort of, I've sort of touched on this before. It's another very sort of much a societal pressure is your parents are generally the primary ones giving you life advice, for at least in the first quarter of your life, and that you've got to be very careful that if you don't want to be like your parents, that you don't really take much of their advice. So that's if your parents are sort of in your ear.
But you still have to take some.
Yeah, some.
That's the hard bit. That's what I mean.
Obviously some.
Yeah, obviously.
But you've got to be careful, because I think as I've made this point before, a lot of people don't realise that they can seek advice outside of their parents. And too many people just end up like their parents that might not want to end up like their parents, but they don't realise that they can seek other advice, and that their parents' word is not gospel. I think that's a more key point. You've got to be very careful that your parents are their own flawed human beings. They don't have infinite knowledge. So be very careful to take their advice with a grain of salt. There'll be some good advice, some shrewd advice, but don't let it dictate your life.
I think just an example with like parenting, you actually nut it down to the aspect. It's like for someone or a couple to have a child, it's like they're just starting the parenting journey. Like how they're not going to have it all figured out. Like you still have to learn things. Yes, you could have influence from your parents and shape, like so if I were to have my own children, it's like, well, I'm just going to be a new dad, I shouldn't know everything, I'm still going to have to learn. So then I would hope that when my kids grow up to the age I am now, they'd understand the same thing. It's like, they tried their best, but realistically, like, it was a new thing for them. You learn a bit over time, and yes, it might be easier for the second child because the parents have had experience with the first, but realistically, it's like, well, then they have to navigate having two children. So it's all journey.
Yes, exactly.
It's all it's a journey, the journey aspect. Yeah. I just want to say we've pretty much covered like the base questions that we wanted to, I guess, go over. Yeah, get your opinion over.
Sure. Yeah.
So
good questions.
No,
good questions all around.
Is there anything you want to ask us or any advice? We'd love to.
Yeah, there's got to be something
opinions
that's irrelevant, kind of, to the conversation that you live by. Maybe something that you live by that we haven't touched on that's really important to you, or a way of thinking that's changed your life. I know we mentioned at the end of one episode, for example, the low-hanging self-help fruit, and my one was that failure is a win. You know, it's a positive thing because you're learning what not to do.
Paying
it's
for
a
education.
Win. Yeah, it's a win. It's a win. So I don't know. Anything comes to mind?
I don't know.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I feel like I'm so early on in my journey, and I really don't know a ton. I feel comfortable talking about fighting insecurity in people's opinion because that's a massive roadblock for me that I've had to go over. I feel pretty confident in everything we've talked about. You know, the AI stuff could go either way.
It's
so
pure speculation for all of us.
I guess, the only other thing that I would say is, you know, we kind of briefly touched on like self-help, and that's how, you know, I got into this like whole thing, whatever this life that I'm living now is. And, you know, it's such an interesting topic because so many guys are into it.
Why do you think so many guys are into it?
Lack of purpose.
Yeah, I feel like self-help, personal development, it gives us purpose, and it helps fill the holes that we feel like we might have. I've always found it interesting, kind of the difference between people who are able to take action on it and not.
Yep.
Talk.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, really, it took me a couple of years to even start that. You know, I dove into audiobooks and books, and I probably read like the top 200 like self-help books for men or whatever. And, you know, they're all so like
impressive though. That's
fascinating.
Yeah. Good on
well, it's not impressive, and I think that's the problem. It's not impressive because it changed my mindset in some areas, but I'm probably no further along. You know, I can take action.
I was meaning more of like the discipline of being able to sit down and read 200 books.
Right.
Because for me, that's hard. Like
there's more books that I've read in my entire life.
Read
that.
We talked about in an old episode with self-help. It's like if there was one way of doing it, there would only need to be one book.
Yeah. Yes.
So like people have different experiences in but that's all like anecdotal.
Yeah.
There are some self-help things or principles that you can apply to your own life, but it's not the same for everyone.
Yeah.
But
just to
go on.
Dive a little deeper on that. You hear these, you know, classic ones out there like you have to get up at 5 a.m. You have to have cold showers to be successful, and it's completely irrelevant. I've made this point before. You can get them. There's millionaires, whatever, successful people out there who are very unhealthy people. Trump is a great example off the top of my head. He's clinically obese. Yet we can all agree that financially, business-wise, so he's very successful. I don't think he's having cold showers, and I don't think he's eating a very healthy diet.
No.
He might be getting up at 5 a.m. That might be one tick on him. But there's other people that doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I'm a night owl, and there's plenty of great minds and entrepreneurs out there who are night owls. And it's all personal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got to be very careful. Some of these things, they can help, but they're not like this golden nugget. Have a cold shower and then you will be successful. It's very much just it's a fine tune. You've still got to do the hard work and actually find, you know, whatever it is that can give you a chance of being successful. Yeah, having cold showers is no good if you don't have a viable business or a viable, you know, career path. That's a little fine tune that could maybe help you, but if you really hate them, it's probably not worth it.
Yeah, I think what's probably stopped me in my teenage years was it's almost like you have decided you're going to have a baby, and so you're like, let me just read all the parenting books first. But as to the example we're talking about before, it's like, no, you have the baby and then you read the books and you make changes along the way, because it's an experience, because otherwise you're just never going to have the baby. There's too many parenting books out there. You know what I mean?
No, exactly.
Just have it, adjust on the fly. That's the only way you're ever going to get it done.
And humans are so adaptable. I think that's the key thing is we tend to underestimate our ability to adapt on the fly.
Yeah.
And you can get stuck in that horrible period where you feel like you need to know everything before you start a certain venture, whether it be having a child, a business, creating YouTube videos. And I'm put my hands up, I'm in that category. I think we all have it to an extent, but you just have to overcome and realize that a couple of hours of work is going to teach you more than reading an entire book.
The low-hanging fruit. Just get all the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, and then the initial work that you put out will in all likelihood be rubbish, but you just learn on the fly, and that's what humans do.
That's this thing for me, like doing the editing process. The first time I did it, like, to be honest, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just playing around. After doing it a couple times, it gets easier to the point where it's like I'm not actually needing to invest as much time into it. It kind of becomes second nature. You just have to actually find the time or like the discipline to actually, like, I just need to sit down and not pick up my phone or
that's the unsexy truth about pretty much all success is that it's going to involve some serious elbow work. There's going to be a lot of boring crap. So if it's video editing, it's somewhat, I would imagine, fairly monotonous work. Thank you for doing it.
That's fine. I just usually have something else up on the screen.
And there's always going to be like a whole bunch of, even if you enjoy it, it's going to be hard. The gritty work. You can't just post a couple of pics on Instagram or whatever. There's going to have to be hard work that's involved, and it's very unsexy. And I think that's why a lot of these books try and sell you a sexy plan. Oh, you just have cold showers in the morning and then you'll be successful. You just meditate, you just say positive affirmations and then you'll be successful. It's like, no, you go out and you do market research. You find a product, you import it, you package it, you sell it. There's a lot of boring steps in there, but it's that sort of meat that's where the success is going to be. All those little positive affirmations, they're fine tuners. You've got to actually have and do something of substance before you should even really look at doing those things.
I think so much of it comes back, and I know I keep coming back to this but it's so important. So much of it comes back to the outside, the pull of the outside forces, the positive and the negative, because there's almost this idea of, well, if I'm going to launch a business, I need to make sure everything is up, operational, perfect before anyone sees it, because what if they judge me? What if they leave negative reviews, blah, blah, blah. Or, the other side of it where they launch the business, they say coming soon, and then that kind of in-between area, it all comes back to just really caring how you're perceived from the outside and not understanding that you're probably going to look like shit for a long time before people go, wow, that's crazy that he did that overnight.
Or like starting a business, it's so like you worrying about like, oh, how am I going to pay tax or how am I going to do these things? It's like you can kind of just learn on the fly. The main point is actually selling the product.
Don't worry about paying tax until you make a profit.
There was an example. There was an example on a TikTok video. This guy would go to people on the street and he would ask them, what do you do now? What's the dream of yours that you'd want to do? And that, say, I want to run a bakery and, whatever. So he'd be like, okay, here's $500. Start now. It's like, then it's like, oh crap. He's like, I'm going to be your first investor. I'm going to be your first customer. So then it like forces them into the point where it's like, I can't just take this person's money. Well, you could, but then it's like, oh, this person's actually stirred something in me. Now I have to actually go out and do it.
But again, to touch on that initial burst will fade. And so that's it. You can't rely on motivation alone. After a week, a month, after that initial, wow, someone believes in me, that's going to fade just as it always does. Homeostasis, your brain always comes back down to middle ground. See, that's it. You have to learn to do, the hard yakka, the discipline. Discipline's far more important. To keep doing the same things or whatever it is, keep evolving. You can't rely on doing things only when you feel like it, or else you're going to severely decrease your chances of being successful.
Identity, I've found, has a lot to do with it as well. Like even in the example you just gave, like going up to someone on the street, like, what would be your dream job? And be like, oh, I want to be a baker. The amount that you're able to change your life in actions by just changing that to, I am a baker.
Yes, nice. I like that.
It sounds so simple, but it's not even law of attraction. It's just like, if I'm a baker, I should probably go do some baking.
Training your subconscious mind, I think, is part of it, because that's your subconscious mind is always listening. So
it's listening for the safety net, and then I think it's the risk aspect. It's like, what if it fails?
Yeah.
Or, like, let's say this podcast blows up. I'm currently in a job, and now it's like, I decide?
You're not talking the right way.
When yes, okay. When this podcast blows up, the next step for me will be, okay, what's the transition from moving from what I'm doing now to putting my eggs in one basket, but still actually being able to support the family.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think a lot of the topics that have actually, you said, I'm sorry, I'm keep coming back to it. It's all intimately related. Yeah. And I think we've mentioned before the analysis paralysis. Thanks to the internet, often you have that feeling like I've got to keep researching, so it's perfect by the time I launch. When that's not the reality, you've got to launch and then learn on the fly.
Yeah.
And I think intimately related to that is the fear of failure, which is effectively caring about what other people negatively are going to think of you, but also not knowing yourself. You said knowing yourself is a key role in success and doing these things. And how do you be yourself if you don't know yourself? How do you know about yourself? I think by doing cringe things and failing. That's how you learn who you are. What you bounce things off the world that fail, learn who you are, and then you can more confidently go and everything. When AI takes over, it's all related. If you know yourself, you're cool, you're chill. You don't need you don't need your job or your car. If AI takes that over.
I need my car.
Love it.
You know what I mean? Hopefully that made some sense.
That makes sense.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't have too much to say about that, to be fair.
Oh, and I also just wanted to say, the self-help trap of reading all the self-help books, for me anyway, it feels like it's always honing in just about getting specific to me. It's just about going to talk to me, and the one thing for me is going to unlock. But I think that's the thing. It's sexy, and it's like, it feels like it's encroaching on something actionable that speaks to me exactly.
Yeah.
But like I said before, some people want to learn violin. You want to sing Jonas Brothers. I want to be a farmer. It's so specific to you. No mass-produced book's ever going to speak to you, but you've got to abstract out the principles. It's just clues. Yeah,
it's just clues. Yeah.
Yeah, I think perhaps you could say the next best thing is, if there's someone who's doing a job that you would love to do, is then trying to talk to that person and say, how do I get to where you are? Not be who you are, but I want to be the One News TV presenter. Well, then you'll have to
I think a mentor is infinitely more value than a
mentorship
book, because as is a classic case that you can probably relate to in that sort of course selling community online. You're selling to people who have absolutely no idea what they're doing, and you can it can be all laid out clearly, but you're coming from years of experience the way it's written.
Yeah.
So you need someone there to hold. Well, I mean, some will make it, but most don't. 99% of course buyers are going to fail. But if you have someone there holding your hand, it just showing them the nuance and it's just infinitely more. So it'll be like a good example where, like, if you went to school and you had the textbooks and no teacher, it would be nowhere near as efficient, would it? And also part of that is someone to keep you accountable. If you have a mentor, someone is checking on you. Oh, so did you do 10 hours of 2 hours of coding today, or whatever it is you're doing? And just feedback, mentor, nuance. I think that's another key one. It's so much of these things are nuanced. You can write it out like a textbook, but there's always going to be little nuanced things that speaking to a real human is infinitely more valuable.
Good points. The mentorship thing is good. That's a common one that comes up in self-help books that I've found. They say get a mentor. Which is kind of what they're trying to do with the course on a mass scale. They're trying to mentor as many people as possible.
But
it doesn't really work.
It's very hard to scale.
Yeah, it's very hard to scale. You're right.
Because the bigger something is in its ambition, the more generic it has to become.
Exactly. And I like that. That's on the note of Alex Becker again. That was one of the key reasons that he stopped selling his courses to beginners. He said, it's not because they were bad courses. It's because I was dealing with people who absolutely know what no idea what they're doing, and those are the people who need the most attention. So you have to be doing one-on-one. You can't be selling a course to 10,000 beginners and be giving them a piece of your time. It's just not. So it wasn't that the courses were bad. It's just that he understood that these people have absolutely no idea what they're doing. They need someone.
That's a good actionable step, actually. Like you're saying, asking someone directly, it's effectively mentorship.
Yes.
They might not be agreeing to mentor you. They might only have 5 seconds of mentorship for you, but if you ask, so as a practical step.
There's a practical step. There's obviously the potential rejection factor, but at least you can say you shot your shot.
Yeah, but that's practical. You go to one single person that you know, rather than a mass-produced self-help book, is probably going to something that the field you want to be in.
God, that's beautifully ironic. I'd never thought about that before. But the whole community, self-help community, rags on people who go to school, who go to like higher education, because it's so cookie cutter and it's so expensive. And then they buy up these fucking courses, cookie cutter and expensive.
That's good.
That's crazy. I've never really thought about that before, but that's so true.
No, I certainly... college, university would not be for me, but I do understand it's not a scam. It's certainly not a scam. I think it's just, again, they're casting too wide of a net in most cases. Same with these courses. Only a few people are truly going to be dedicated enough to really take advantage of these courses. Same with college, university. Way too many people are going because, there's no real barrier to entry. Well, money, but in New Zealand... it's easy. It's easy to think because it's a tax-free loan. You don't have to pay up front. And there's just too wide of a net cast. And I think so. A good example actually of this would be a university or college like Harvard. It's very hard to get into Harvard, so that's going to be the success rates of Harvard are going to be way higher than the University of Canterbury because they're only selecting the cream,
but
then the crop.
Then all the big tech companies have brought out of dropouts from Harvard.
College is not for me, and it's certainly not a prerequisite for success.
Yeah.
But I've got some respect for places like Harvard. I think they serve a place in society. It's just, and as I say, I think the Harvard business model's right, where it's so expensive, so hard to get in.
Yeah.
They're only the people who are really going to put 100% in. Well, not everyone, because you do get dropouts like Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah. That's where I was going with that.
I see.
But a lot, the success rate and participation rate will be far higher than, say, a university like Canterbury, where you can just go in and...
Well, I think it's a timing thing as well. Sometimes I consider going to university
much better,
and doing a course for just my intellectual curiosity.
Yeah, and I think it'll be much better, if you really understand yourself and know what you're doing. So in your 20s or even in your 30s, even 40s, I mean, it's not uncommon nowadays, people going to university at quite a late age. I think that's much better if you really understand why you're going, as opposed to this idiot 18-year-old self, as we all were. Well, certainly I was. And you're like, I better go to university. I didn't go to university, but a lot of people are in that category. They didn't have a clue about life, and it's the path of least resistance. Everyone else is doing it, so I'll go there. But they didn't really know why they were going there. It's just societal pressure sort of thing. Whereas if you really understand, this is what I do, this is a course that would benefit my skill set, and plus I just love learning at this age, whatever it is, that's really solid. Absolute respect that, and I've considered that myself, and will consider that myself. I think that's very sensible, because you know the reason you're going. You're not just going on a whim.
I can see how it's quite an easy sell coming out of high school to go to university due to what we were talking about before, the feeling of setting another goal after you've completed it. You know what I mean?
True.
Like you finish high school, of course it makes sense to move that goal on. That's okay. That's my next challenge. Because the moment you're not in education, it kind of falls out on you, and you're like, oh God.
It's crazy. Like, it's very much a bubble. That's the way I describe it. School is like a bubble. University is like an extension of that bubble. Probably not to quite the same extent, because there's still a lot more individual reliance in it. But school is like a massive bubble. And I've always said, like, it was an absolute reality check for me that year out of high school, realizing that you didn't really have that many friends. They were acquaintances. They were school friends. You saw them when you're in the bubble, but as soon as the bubble stopped putting you together, they all disappeared. And that was a hell of a reality check for me that year, 2013.
Final thoughts?
No, I think maybe that's
I've just got one more question.
Okay,
Have you had any sort of like big failures, whether that be monetarily in business or?
Oh God.
Big business whoopsies.
Wow, I wouldn't say big.
Okay.
Yeah, there's definitely been like
Learning
moments where I got
curves.
pretty tight. Yeah, a couple years out of high school where I was really having the first crack at the self-employed thing. You know, there was like quite a few weeks in there where I probably wasn't eating as much as I should have.
Right.
And
Damn, it's pretty close. It was getting pretty close.
one week I bought a V from a dairy, so it's $4 or something like that, and because of that the rent didn't go through.
Shit.
So I didn't have enough
That's
money.
crazy, man.
It was that tight.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was probably the worst it got. There's been a lot from there.
Never had like a bad investment, bought a batch of inventory that wasn't up to scratch or just didn't sell.
Ooh.
Like failed product lines. Like, I know I think you've trialed a few things.
Yeah, many failures here and there.
Nothing,
It's like I have like a couple of NFTs that didn't go up in value.
Yeah.
Shock horror, you know what I mean? Just stuff like that. Yeah. But probably nothing to write home about. Nothing. Yeah. But I feel like that's kind of the nature of it. I probably should be better at it, taking bigger risks, but I am quite calculated with the risks that I
think
I can
it's
see that.
better to be that way than too much the other way. Why is there a dog?
There's a dog.
It's neighbour's dog. It's Fred.
He's cool.
Oh, he looks nice.
As opposed to you probably heard about like Don Quo recently. That like that way too much risk. I think erring on the side of caution is definitely better. Yeah, there's a balancing act there. You got to take some risk, but don't be rash. Yeah.
Don't put all your money in GameStop.
I know you're a confident dude. It's clear to anyone who sees you in the public eye. But I hope you realize how special the stuff you do is.
Yeah,
I think the frequency of it, is inspirational.
Mad respect.
And people who are criticizing, as everyone is told and knows, it's coming from a place of lack for them.
Exactly.
So, they're the ones taking the L.
Yep.
I think maybe we'll finish on that note. Is there anything you wanted to share with the viewers, what you're getting up to, anything exciting you're working
we're starting
on?
Pokemon.
Time.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I'm doing a live stream coming up at the middle to end of next month. Going to be streaming Pokemon for 30 hours to raise money for a cancer charity.
Nice.
And some new music coming soon, vaguely in the future.
Cool.
Just projects. Lucas Devotion on everything.
Projects.
So.
Awesome.
I just got projects. I got projects on the go.
We'll link you in the description. But,
that's impressive, man.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for coming on and speaking to us. You've been I guess for me personally, like seeing you put yourself out there as someone who has been battling since childhood, adolescence, even coming out of school, like putting myself out there, being worried about what other people think. I just want to say that's awesome that you do that.
I think so.
And it's very admirable.
Yep.
We've enjoyed having you on.
Pretty sure I said the exact same thing, Nav.
hey, well, both of our feelings are valid.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Just even the energy you provide.
Yeah, totally.
Makes you feel like when I go home and do something productive.
I gotta go home and feed my dog. He's probably...
that's a form of productivity.
Yeah,
hopefully you feel somewhat counselled. There's always the feeling, kind of a feeling at the end of a good episode. I'm feeling it.
Okay.
Where you feel like you reflected enough on you. Felt we learned a bit more about yourself.
Yeah,
maybe.
there has been a bit of reflection.
I think it's good to take some and to receive some. That sounded a lot worse than it needs to be. But we'll wrap it up there. Thanks everyone for listening or watching. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Friday Council. We're now on YouTube.
Thanks to Nav's gamifying of the tech.
Trying my best, leveling up.
Yeah,
but
awesome.
It's been fun. We're almost at the 2 hour mark, our longest pod to date.
By a country mile.
Wow.
But hey, we've enjoyed it. I don't think there's been any lack or anything.
No,
it's
absolutely not.
Conversation's been fun.
Enjoy
but thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Later.
See ya.